Okay, hi, welcome back. My name's Devraj. Mysticism in the Body, and we're back with the Zohar, Pritzker edition, translated by Daniel Matt. And in many ways, I can imagine, the Zohar seems like a rather boring sort of book to the average kind of person a little bit interested in mysticism. It's insanely long. It's very, very dense in places. It's written in a kind of weird type of Aramaic, apparently, which doesn't easily make sense. And there's a lot of stuff in both, particularly the Western esoteric scene, because the Zohar is a cornerstone of rabbinic Kabbalah, rabbinic mysticism, Jewish mysticism. But there's a lot of stuff in the Western esoteric scene which is a lot more attractive and exciting. Most certainly, numerology and gematria, conjuring up kind of, demons and angels from the Goetic realms, John Dee and Edward Kelly and the Holy Table and all of this, and Aleister Crowley, all a great deal more exciting, at least to my mind. Nevertheless, the Zohar, written in the late 13th century in Spain by Moses de Leon, this book underpins so much of mysticism, really. People will often talk about, when they're doing programs on the history of Western mysticism or something, a lot of it will go back to Iamblichus or the Neoplatonists and those kind of guys, but I think also a lot goes back to this book, Zohar, and the people that managed to kind of start to make sense of it or to dig into it. So I think it's a foundational text for Western mysticism as well as Jewish mysticism, which is a way of saying it's worth having a crack at it. And perhaps you might think, well, what credentials do you have, Devraj, for having a crack at the Zohar? Surely we need to talk to some, proper rabbis and experts and people who've studied it for decades and this kind of thing. Not unreasonable. I can only say that I do listen to people who talk about the Zohar from highly credentialed backgrounds, and I haven't been I'm not going to put anybody down, but I haven't been wow, this person's really getting it. I think everyone is struggling. It's not necessarily about having a big intellect or knowing a whole ton of Kabbalah. That can obviously be useful, that you're familiar with the concepts. But I haven't seen anyone really untangle it so deeply, and I could have missed them. Feel free to leave me a note if you recommend someone good. But otherwise, given this, I feel quite happy and motivated to have a crack at it myself. And despite, the rather dense material that we come into, and the first passage that I looked at was just 3 passages into the introduction, and it was super dense, all about how the universe came into being. And not written directly, but all kind of through analogy and pointings. Because in a sense, that's kind of all you can do in this kind of realm, with this kind of topic matter. And I think a modern way of understanding Zohar, we're now on the sort of second passage. These early passages are broken by the phrase Bereshit, then a new kind of passage starts. We're going straight back into super dense writing. But in modern terms, what it's really about to me, it's about the simulation. It's about the idea that the universe is it's being created somewhere, somehow. And this world that we see around us and our body and, all the ways that we're interacting in this world, it's kind of being simulated in a certain way. And of course, in the Western tradition, modern Western society, the biggest kind of simulation movie was from the Wachowskis back in the 90s called The Matrix. And a super exciting movie that made a lot of us really think hard. I remember coming out of that movie not long after it came out in Tottenham Court Road in London in an old cinema there, feeling like I was back on acid because, it's it points you in there, what if all of this stuff around you is a bit fake, if it's all a bit of an illusion? And I very much enjoyed The Matrix and even the follow-ups, even the fourth one. I thought it still had good stuff in there. But there's a big problem with this kind of Hollywood Matrix concept in that, Neo, Keanu Reeves, the central character, he takes the red pill, and he wakes up in this real kind of world underneath. Sometimes I think if I took the red pill, I'd wake up and find I'm Agent Smith, but that's completely an aside. But he's like this, he's essentially the same person, but he's living in a different world. So, he wakes up, he's essentially still Neo, he develops certain powers and gets really good at fighting and stuff, but he's essentially the same person. And I think it's fairly safe to say to anyone who's done a basic level of mystical stuff or meditation, it's not going to be like this. This is not a remotely accurate portrayal of the Matrix, of the simulation. It's completely not going to be like this. It's absolutely crystal clear that our sense of personal selfhood inside of us, that is a big part of the simulation. And our concept of self and world, of inside and outside, or of me and not me, that is a big part of the simulation, our subjectivity, our experience. And perhaps that wouldn't make for such an exciting movie. I probably wouldn't pay to watch, Neo take the red pill and go into some sort of meditation state for 4 hours or something. It wouldn't be such an exciting movie, like I'm saying, but that's more realistically what it's about. And the kind of good thing that this points to, in a sense, is that it means you are not locked out. You are alive right now, if you're watching this, and you are not locked out. You can go inside. You don't need a red pill. And anyway, we don't really have any red pills yet. But you just need to get into your inner world. And then perhaps you can get access to the control room of the simulation, where it's actually, where you're going back deeper inside yourself. You're finding doorways inside yourself. And you're getting more into the control room, so to speak, of this simulation. And really, to me, this is an absolutely central aspect to Jewish mysticism. It doesn't look like this on the surface. It's all about these rabbis wandering around 2nd century Judea, chatting to each other, as old men do. But actually, it's really trying to tell you how to get back into the simulation. And of course, if you're from sort of modern Western conspiracy kind of background, you might think, well, the Jews have worked out how to get back into the simulation. They're controlling all of us. Who knows? I'm not so much in that kind of mindset. But nevertheless, even if this were the case, or if someone else is doing it, some other race or people or whatever, why don't you do it too? That's, to me, an equally valid question. Why don't you learn to look inside, take away the layers of stuff that have accumulated around your being, and get back in towards the core? Because for me, when I look at the world, I see so many people complaining about the state of it, and, that all the power is held in certain elite groups and whatever. Maybe there's a race angle to it too. And I can get angry about this stuff as well, but equally there's a question, at some point, stop blaming and go back in yourself. It's not that you have to go and take on the kind of global banking elite or something like that. You can also go back into the simulation, work your way back upstream and see if you can change things. To me, that seems entirely valid, and certainly a great deal better than spending your life blaming, which is anyway completely disempowering and just leaves you as a victim. I think that perspective is entirely valid. And it's a big strand to me of what mysticism is all about. If you're part of the Golden Dawn, I've never been a part of the Golden Dawn, but as I understand it, once you do these opening and initiatory grades, you get to Adeptus Minor. If it's assigned to Tipperet on the Tree of Life, they kind of, made use of the old Jewish tree and kind of fiddled with it a bit and reconceived it in the West. And then you're kind of going up until you're in the kind of inner order, but you're not really in the fully inner order until you get to Binar. And this was, the third Sephirah, and this was, because we're chimps, basically. I know it's not nice to say that, but we're obsessed with status hierarchies. So all these kind of magical types from the Golden Dawn and MacGregor Mathers and Aleister Crowley and all these kind of characters, they're all trying to get back up into Binar and Hokmah. This was the kind of objective. They were trying to get to control the world. And these concepts are all coming from this book, in my opinion. I don't consider myself an expert on the roots of Western mysticism, but when you start to dig into the Zohar, this stuff is all in there. And the big thing that it's really pointing to, as we saw in the first paragraph or the first section what we looked at, I've numbered them a little bit different now. You'll notice so you've got 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, and now we're 2, 1, 2, 2. But this first section that we looked at, self-inquiry, investigating who you are is a big part of it. So anyway, this is a bit of preamble. Let's get back into this text. And this section that we're looking at from the in the beginning here to sort of the next in the beginning in a few pages time here, it's kind of broken up into two parts. The first part is super dense, and the second part looks a lot easier to me. So we can go back into these first three paragraphs, because I get a few insights and I read a bit more. And then there's a couple more paragraphs to do of super dense material until we start to come into what looks like a bit easier. So let's try and do those extra 2 paragraphs today. But let's get back into it. We've got Rabbi Yudai. I don't think he appears so much, but anyway, he's starting this one. Said, Rabbi Yudai said, "What is Bereshit?" This is, of course, the first word of the Bible, the Torah. Bereshit here, Bereshit. Bereshit bara, with wisdom, which is straight away pointing at this idea of the second Sephirah Chokmah. This is the wisdom on which the world stands, through which one enters high hidden mysteries. So it's saying, that this wisdom, this Chokmah, is where the world is standing. It's what it's standing on. It's where it's coming from. And through this doorway, one enters high hidden mysteries. And something useful, I think, to comprehend here is that, when the Western mystery traditions, like the Golden Dawn, took over the Tree of Life, they kind of fiddled with the Sephirah in their conception a little bit. My understanding from Zohar is that Chokmah, the second Sephirah, it's a point. It's a microscopically small point, essentially. So this idea that these Sephirah are all essentially the same, but they've got different qualities. Maybe for lower sixth Sephirah, from Hesed down to Yesod, that's a kind of useful concept, maybe. But with the upper three, I don't think it's a very useful concept. Not if you want to really get into this stuff and get deeper into it. So that's just worth mentioning. Continues, here were engraved 6 vast supernal dimensions from which everything emerges, from which issued 6 springs and streams flowing into the immense ocean. So I think we're almost certainly talking that inside of wisdom are 6 dimensions, which is really 3 dimensions, but they've obviously each got 2 directions. Up also suggests down, left, right, forward, back. This is Bereshit, created 6, created from here. So this is this wordplay. We looked at this last time. Let's just go back into this. This is our first 2 lines of the Torah, Bereshit, bara, and it's. Let's forget about bara for a moment, and just look at this opening word, Bereshit. And what it's saying here is split those up into 2. So you've got Bereshit as one word, or you can consider it Bereshit. And sheet means 6, basically, I think in Aramaic, possibly kind of in Hebrew too. And bara is created. And then you notice, of course, that bara is repeated in the third word or second word, if it's just Bereshit, bara. So it's pointing at this and saying that this is very significant, but it's a kind of key that can help you to unlock, and get back inside Chokmah, get back into the control room of the simulation. That's what it's talking about. So this is Bereshit, created 6, created from here. Who created them? The unmentioned, the hidden, unknown. So, that can only be investigated on a personal level. There's no way to express it in language. Rabbi here and Rabbi Jose were walking on the way as they reached the site of a certain field. Don't quite know. That's suggestive of something, site of a certain field, but I don't know what it means. Rabbi here said to Rabbi Jose, what you have said, Bereshit, is certainly true, for there are 6 supernal days in Torah. In the Torah, not more, the others are concealed, but in the secrets of creation we have discovered this. So saying it's true. There are these 6 dimensions, and they're created inside Chokmah. And it continues, the holy hidden one. So this is kind of pointing to the idea of a creative agency, hidden right back behind the scenes, engraved and engraving in the innards of a recess, punctuated by a thrust point. So, you've got this concept of there's this kind of recess, and he's engraving stuff inside of it. We looked at this in the last episode 2.1, that this idea of taking something out is quite prominent in Kabbalah, in Sefer Yetzirah as well. You're removing something to create an effect as opposed to adding something. So you're maintaining the essential wholeness, but giving the appearance of separation, of difference. And this thrust point is Hokmah. He engraved that engraving, hiding it away like one who locks up everything under a single key, which locks everything within a single palace. We looked at this as well, So there's this recess and there's stuff being engraved inside of it, and it's completely hidden away. It's completely inaccessible. Although everything is hidden away within that palace, the essence of everything lies in that key. So the single key mentioned in the sentence before, also contains, it's got this kind of macrocosm, microcosm feel to it. It's got the essence of everything in the key, and that's the key which opens and closes. So straight away we've got this concept of this recess, which is also a palace, with all sorts of stuff engraved in it, including 6 supernal dimensions. But it's locked by this key. This key also contains the essence of everything. Within that palace lie hidden treasures, one greater than the other. So that's kind of suggesting that there is a sense of scale or magnitude, that there is a kind of direction to it, developmental arc of some sort. Within that palace stand gates built cryptically, 50 of them. So this, it's kind of, from our other background knowledge of Kabbalah, this is strongly intimating that the palace is kind of like Binah, because it's famously got 50 gates of access to it. Carved into 4 sides, there were 49. So it's saying, it's 50 gates, and 49 of them are carved into 4 sides, but one gate has no side. No one knows whether it is above or below. It is shut. In those gates is one lock and one precise place for inserting the key, marked only by the impress of the key, known only to the key. So we're talking back about the other 49 gates, can only be found by the key. Concerning this mystery, it is written. So this is all about, it's kind of cryptography. It's reminiscent of like the kind of, people who are traveling in inner realms may need passwords to get through certain kind of very hideous looking angels or demons who are acting as guardians. Concerning this mystery, it is written, Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God created. Bereshit is the key enclosing all, closing and opening. So, it's really saying this first word is a kind of cryptographic key. When it closes those gates, enclosing them within itself, then indeed Bereshit, a revealed word, combined with a concealed word. So what it's saying is when the word is one, when we have Bereshit, then the gate is open, then creation is manifest. Bara, created, is always concealed, closing, not opening. So it's really identifying this word bara as a kind of determining factor as to whether the gate is open or closed. And as I looked last time, because Bereshit means in the beginning, Rashit beginning, Bereshit, in the beginning, it's intimating that time comes into existence when these two words are combined. And when it becomes Berashit, then we're back with these 6 supernal dimensions that have been created, but they're internal. They're not flowing out. They're not creating a world. So this is like the real kind of guts of the simulation, if you imagine it like that, or the guts of, existence. All of this comes into existence when these 2 words are combined and not kept apart. And that's where we got to. Let's continue along. Next 2 paragraphs. It's pretty dense, but let's keep hacking in there and see if we can get somewhere. Maybe you get a bit further than I do. Rabbi Yosei said, "Certainly so. I heard the holy lamp." I think that's talking about Rabbi Shimon, according to this little superscript here. And Rabbi Shimon, remember, he was for a long time believed to be the writer of the Zohar back in the 2nd century. And still many people would say that it was channeled by the writer in the 13th century from Rabbi Shimon. And Rabbi Shimon lived a long time, maybe 15 years, in a cave, hiding out from the Romans in 2nd century Judea. And so the intimation is that he developed his meditations and understanding of the inner world so deeply in that time that he ascended to another level and is now kind of explaining, through this channel 10 centuries later, to this guy in Spain, Moses de Leon. He's giving him a kind of mystical text which explains how you get back there, how you get into the control room, so to speak. I heard the Holy Lamp say so, that bara is a concealed word, closing, not opening. As long as the world was locked within the word bara, it was not, did not exist. So that's pretty explicit. Once bara is on its own, even though the word means created, the world did not exist. It was just in potency, it was engraving inside the recess. Enveloping everything was tohu, which means chaos, great Kabbalistic word, and as long as tohu reigned, the world was not, did not exist. When did that key open gates? When it was fit. When was it fit to be fruitful, to generate offspring? When Abraham arrived, as is written, these are the generations of heaven and earth. Bahabram, when they were created, this is Genesis 2:4, and we have learned Be Avraham, through Abraham. So I don't think it's saying that this guy Abraham rocked up, because obviously he would need to be created also. I think it's more pointing towards the letters in this word, because you see bara in there as well. Whereas everything was concealed in the word bara, now the letters were transposed and rendered fruitful. A pillar emerged, generating offspring. Aber, Aleph, Beth, Resh, or an organ, holy foundation on which the world stands. I think that's relating to Yesod, if you're familiar with the Sephirot. But basically, by rearranging the letters of bara, you get this word Aber, and now existence can happen. Next paragraph, when Aber was inscribed in the word bara, the supernal concealed one inscribed another inscription for its glorious name. So as well as doing this, it's inscribed Aber, first three letters of Abraham. This is Mi Bara Al-Ha, who created these, which we looked at right at the beginning of this series. The holy blessed name, Ma, what, was also inscribed. Once you rearrange the letters of bara and inscribe them within bara, you also got this Mi Bara Al-Ha, and you got Ma, the word what. Out of bara, it generated Aber, inscribing Ele at one end and Ever at the other. Holy concealed one. Ele exists, Aber exists. As one was completed, so was the other. In Aber, it engraved He. In Ele, it engraved Yod. Once it had inscribed Aber, once you'd put these letters inside bara, you got these other words. Letters were aroused to complete one side and the other. It produced two mems, moving one to this side, one to that. The holy name was completed. So one side became Elohim from Ele, and then it's added Yod, as it's saying here, and then it's added one mem. So Elohim, gods. And then the other name was created from Aber, added a He, as it's saying here, and then again a mem, Abraham. So Abraham and Elohim came into existence together. These two kind of words, potencies of different letters. Remember, in Kabbalah, it's the Hebrew letters that are the actual instruments of creation. As one was completed, so was the other. Then life was generated and the complete name emerged, unlike before, as is written. These are the generations of heaven and earth. Behibare'am. When they were created, all remained suspended until the name of Abraham was created. Once that name was completed, the holy name was completed, as the verse concludes. On that day, Yahweh Elohim made earth and heaven. Genesis 2:4. So I wouldn't say I can get much deeper into this text. The letters are obviously central, and it's giving either a kind of metaphor, an analogy for how existence came into being, or it's given a direct explanation, but it's through these letters. We didn't go into it, but the rather long passage before this passage that we're looking at is about the 22 letters of Hebrew and which one was kind of worthy enough to begin Bereshit, to begin Torah. But essentially what it's saying is, all these dimensions were engraved inside of a recess, inside Hokmah, or punctuated by Hokmah. And this whole assembly might be considered some kind of palace, Binah. And then when this engraved word Bereshit is split in two, and then the word bara, the first three letters, are transposed, then this creative process began. And the universe starts to unfold and come into existence. Okay, so I think that's enough for one day. Like I said, the second part of this passage of the Zohar, until we get to the next Bereshit, is actually a bit kind of easier to understand, I think, and a bit more directly comprehensible. So we'll look at that next week. Meanwhile, if you feel intrigued, do feel free to get hold of this book. First book of Zohar, translated by Daniel Matt, Pritzker edition. And dig into it yourself. Can you work out what it's really saying here? Is there some hidden deep mystery inside these letters? To me, this is more about words and language, whereas the passage before also contained some sense of, self-inquiry and questioning, using the word who to question. Nevertheless, there may be some stuff I'm missing. Feel free to comment if you can see things. And otherwise, I wish you well. And I'll see you again shortly for some more mysticism and the body. Thank you.